You may never be opportune to come across this information again if you do not pay close attention and take note of these crops carefully. Every year, Americans spend more than $60 billion on superfoods and specialty health food items, freeze-dried powders, imported berries, protein extracted from ordinary plants and sold back at a steep markup. Meanwhile, a small garden bed planted with crops most people consider almost too easy to bother growing can quietly outperform a good chunk of that shopping cart for the price of a few seed packets. University extension research keeps confirming this, and so does a well-documented piece of World War II history, when ordinary backyard gardens fed a meaningful share of an entire country during a real shortage. Today, we are counting down 10 easy garden crops that go head-to-head with expensive health food items. And for at least half of these, we will show you the exact preparation detail most people get wrong, the one that decides whether you actually get the value or waste it. Stay with me to number 1. It is almost certainly already in your kitchen, and you have probably never once compared what it does to the pill or powder version sold at a health food store. And at number 5, a piece of naval history involving one vegetable, a disease that used to kill sailors by the thousands, and a captain who solved it with something you could grow in a bucket. Here is the actual reason a homegrown crop can outperform a packaged version of the same nutrient. And it has less to do with the plant than with time. The moment a vegetable is harvested, several of its nutrients begin breaking down, and that decline continues through transport, storage, and every day it sits on a shelf. Turning a crop into a powder or a capsule solves the spoilage problem, but it often creates a different one. Every item on this list shows a different version of that same trade-off. One quick note before we start. If a straight comparison like this, with no sponsor on either side, is useful to you, subscribing just means the next one shows up for you automatically, instead of you having to go find it. That is really all it does. Now, number 10. Number 10 is peas, the plant most people do not realize is already being sold back to them at a considerable markup. Fresh green peas, plain, unglamorous, and usually the cheapest packet in the seed rack, are the same plant that industrial processors extract, isolate, and dry into pea protein powder, the kind sold in tubs for $30 or $40 at any health food store. University agricultural extension programs have tracked pea nutrition for decades, largely because peas were one of the easiest, most reliable crops for home gardeners and small farms to grow season after season, long before anyone thought to isolate anything out of them. A single cooked cup of green peas delivers around 8 grams of protein and roughly 9 grams of fiber, along with vitamin C, vitamin K, and a set of plant compounds called saponins that are stripped out completely during the isolation process used to make the powder. That fiber matters more than most people realize. It slows down how quickly the protein and natural sugars in peas are absorbed, which keeps you fuller longer and avoids the blood sugar spike that a fast-absorbing isolated protein powder can produce on its own. Here's the detail almost everyone growing peas gets wrong. Peas lose a meaningful share of their vitamin C within hours of being picked if left at room temperature. So if you are growing your own, harvest them right before you plan to eat or freeze them, not a day or two in advance, sitting in a bowl on the counter. A cup of fresh or lightly steamed peas several times a week during the season gives you the protein, the fiber, and the vitamin C together in the same bite for a fraction of what the powdered version costs once someone else has already taken it apart. Number 9 is kale, the plant that somehow gets sold to you twice, once fresh in the produce aisle for almost nothing, and again as a $5 bag of dehydrated kale chips or a scoop of green superfood powder built partly from the same leaf. Land-grant university research programs have studied kale for generations, specifically because it tolerates poor soil and cold weather better than almost any other leafy green, which is exactly why home gardeners have relied on it as an easy, reliable crop for a very long time. A single cooked cup of kale delivers well over your full daily requirement of vitamin K, along with a strong dose of vitamin C and a pair of carotenoids called lutein and zeaxanthin, specifically associated with protecting vision as we get older. Powdered green blends often use dehydrated kale as a base ingredient, and the drying itself is not the problem, but the shelf life before that powder reaches your kitchen means real time has already passed since it was picked, and light and oxygen exposure during storage steadily work against exactly the compounds you are paying for. Here is the detail most people get wrong with fresh kale. Eating it entirely raw in large amounts limits how much calcium and certain minerals your body can actually absorb because of naturally occurring compounds in the raw leaf. A light steam or simply massaging the leaves with a bit of oil and lemon juice before eating them raw breaks down enough of that barrier to noticeably improve absorption. A cup or two of cooked kale or a well-massaged raw kale salad several times a week gives you the same nutrients the powder is chasing at the point where they are freshest and most intact. It was never worth $5 a bag. It was worth planting. Number 8 is the sweet potato, an easy, forgiving crop that quietly does the job of an electrolyte drink packet without asking you to tear open anything or dissolve it in water. Sweet potatoes have been a staple of small farm and homestead food systems for generations, valued specifically because they store well through winter without any processing at all, keeping their nutrition largely intact over months in a cool, dark space. One medium baked sweet potato, skin on, delivers more potassium than a banana, along with a substantial dose of beta carotene, the plant compound your body converts into vitamin A, and a meaningful amount of fiber. Electrolyte powder packets are built primarily around sodium and potassium, aimed at replacing what you lose through sweat. A sweet potato delivers real potassium in a whole food form, alongside fiber most electrolyte products do not contain at all, without the added sugar or artificial flavoring that many powdered versions include. Here is the detail most people get wrong. Cooking a sweet potato at a very high temperature for a short time is not the ideal method. A slower bake, at a moderate oven temperature for closer to an hour, gives an enzyme inside the potato more time to convert its starches into simpler sugars, which measurably increases its beta-carotene availability and gives it that deep, naturally sweet flavor without adding anything at all. One medium sweet potato, skin on, a few times a week, particularly after time outdoors or physical activity, does more of that electrolyte replenishing work than most people assume for the cost of a single vegetable instead of a box of packets. Number 7 is beets, a crop easy enough for a first-time gardener to succeed with in a single season. And now, the exact plant behind one of the most popular supplement categories on the market, beetroot powder, sold specifically for blood pressure and exercise performance. Beets are rich in dietary nitrates, compounds your body converts through a process that begins with bacteria on your tongue into nitric oxide, a molecule that relaxes and widens blood vessels. A randomized, placebo-controlled study published in the journal Nutrients gave nitrate-rich beetroot juice to healthy older adults and measured a real acute reduction in blood pressure afterward. A single medium beet delivers a meaningful dose of these same nitrates, along with folate, manganese, and a group of pigments called betalains, which show antioxidant activity in laboratory research and are largely responsible for the vegetable's deep color. Here is the detail almost every home cook gets wrong. Boiling beets in a large volume of water leaches a significant share of both the nitrates and the color straight into the water they are cooked in. Roasting beets whole, wrapped in foil, at a moderate oven temperature for about an hour, keeps nearly everything sealed inside where it belongs, instead of pouring it down the drain with the cooking water. One medium roasted beet a few times a week gives you a real food-based dose of the same compound an entire supplement category has been built around selling you in powdered form, usually at a considerably higher price per serving. For the record, The effect from powdered beetroot supplements is not fake. It is simply the same effect a vegetable already does before anyone dried, packaged, and marked it up. Number 6 is Swiss chard, one of the easiest greens to keep producing all season long, and the plant equivalent of a wellness trend currently selling for real money in liquid drop form, liquid chlorophyll, marketed with claims about detoxing the blood and boosting energy. Chard has been grown in home gardens for a very long time, specifically because a single planting keeps producing new leaves for months, cut and come again, without needing to be replanted. A cup of cooked Swiss chard delivers a substantial dose of vitamin K, a meaningful amount of magnesium, and yes, real chlorophyll, the same pigment being sold in concentrated drop form. Chlorophyll itself does have documented antioxidant properties in laboratory research, but the specific claims made for liquid chlorophyll supplements, that it detoxifies your blood or dramatically boosts energy, go considerably further than the current evidence actually supports. What a whole leaf of chard gives you that a bottle of drops does not is the fiber, the magnesium, the vitamin K, and the potassium that traveled alongside the chlorophyll the entire time for the cost of a seed packet instead of a monthly subscription. Here is the detail most people get wrong with chard specifically. The stems are usually thrown away when they actually hold a meaningful share of the plant's magnesium and fiber. Chop the stems finely and saute them for a few minutes before adding the leaves, since they take longer to soften. A cup or two of cooked chard, stems included, a few times a week, gives you real chlorophyll bundled with everything else it naturally comes with, rather than paying to have it separated out and put in a bottle. Number 5 is cabbage, and this is the story I promised you at the beginning. For centuries, sailors on long ocean voyages died by the thousands from a disease called scurvy, caused by a lack of vitamin C, which most ships had no reliable way to provide once fresh food ran out, weeks into a journey. In the late 1700s, the British explorer Captain James Cook set out on voyages lasting years at a time, and he did something almost no other captain of his era took seriously enough. He loaded his ships with large stores of sauerkraut, fermented cabbage, and required his crew to eat it regularly throughout the journey. On voyages where other captains lost large portions of their crews to scurvy, Cook's ships came through with the disease almost entirely absent, a result striking enough that he was later recognized by the Royal Society specifically for solving a problem that had plagued naval travel for generations. It is worth noticing how directly that outcome traces back to a single specific compound. Fermented cabbage retains, and in some cases even concentrates, the vitamin C from the raw vegetable. And vitamin C is precisely the nutrient an extended diet without fresh food fails to provide. Cook did not know the biochemistry behind it. He simply noticed that the crews who ate the fermented cabbage stayed healthy, and the ones who did not, did not. Cabbage itself is about as forgiving a crop as exists in a home garden, tolerant of cold and poor soil, which is exactly why it became a backbone crop for small farms for centuries. A single cup of raw cabbage delivers a full day's requirement of vitamin C on its own, along with plant compounds called glucosinolates that support the body's natural detoxification enzymes. Once fermented, naturally occurring lactic acid bacteria multiply throughout the shredded cabbage, producing live cultures and organic acids, turning it into a genuinely probiotic food in the process, one that compares favorably to a bottle of probiotic capsules, which can run considerably more per serving for a similar range of live bacterial strains, without the vitamin C or fiber that whole fermented cabbage delivers at the same time. Here is the detail most home fermenters get wrong. Using too little salt, or a salt with iodine or anti-caking agents added, disrupts fermentation and either invites the wrong bacteria or slows the right ones down. Use plain, non-iodized salt at roughly 2% of the cabbage's weight and give it 2 to 4 weeks at room temperature before moving it to the refrigerator. A quarter cup of properly fermented, unpasteurized sauerkraut a day is a reasonable target. It once meant the difference between a ship's crew surviving a voyage or not. It still quietly does more than most people realize, sitting in a jar in the refrigerator door. Number 4 is the carrot, a crop so easy to grow that it is often the first thing handed to a child planting a garden for the first time, and the plant at the center of a genuinely important lesson about why the whole food usually beats the isolated pill. Carrots are rich in beta carotene, the orange pigment your body converts into vitamin A, along with a pair of carotenoids called lutein and zeaxanthin that concentrate in the eye and are associated with protecting vision as we age. Here is where the story takes a turn most people have never heard. In large clinical trials during the 1990s, researchers gave high-dose, isolated synthetic beta-carotene supplements to smokers, expecting to see a reduction in lung cancer risk based on the patterns seen in people who ate carotene-rich vegetables. Instead, the trials found an increase in lung cancer risk in the group taking the isolated supplement, a result significant enough that at least one major trial was stopped early. Researchers still study exactly why, but the leading explanation is that beta-carotene behaves differently, and in some contexts, less safely, when it arrives in the body alone, at a very high dose, disconnected from the full mix of compounds a carrot naturally delivers alongside it. This is precisely the pattern worth remembering. Whole food carotenoids from actual vegetables have consistently been associated with benefit, while isolated, high-dose versions of that same compound have, in at least this specific case, shown real cause for caution. Here is the detail most people get wrong with carrots specifically. Beta-carotene is fat-soluble, meaning it is poorly absorbed on its own. Eating carrots with even a small amount of fat, a drizzle of olive oil, a handful of nuts alongside them, measurably increases how much of it you actually absorb, more than the carrot itself changing at all. A cup of carrots, cooked lightly with a bit of fat, a few times a week, delivers this compound the way it was always meant to arrive, with its full supporting cast intact. Number 3 is broccoli, specifically its sprouted form, and this is where the price difference between the fresh crop and its supplement version becomes almost impossible to ignore. Broccoli sprouts contain a compound called glucoraphanin, which converts into sulforaphane, a molecule studied for its ability to switch on a broad set of the body's own antioxidant and detoxification genes. Sprouts contain dramatically more of this compound than mature broccoli, which is exactly why an entire supplement category of sulforaphane capsules has been built specifically around them. Independent researchers have directly compared the two. In one widely cited comparison, a group consuming a single cup of fresh broccoli sprouts at a cost of roughly 25 cents showed a considerably larger rise in these beneficial compounds in their bloodstream than a separate group taking 6 capsules of a leading broccoli supplement at a cost of about $2 for that same day's dose. The researchers concluded that the bioavailability of these compounds from the whole sprout was dramatically higher than from the processed supplement, at a small fraction of the price. The reason comes down to a single enzyme, myrosinase, required to convert the sprout's stored compound into its active form. Fresh sprouts contain that enzyme naturally and intact. Many supplement manufacturing processes damage or remove it, meaning capsules often deliver considerably less of the active compound than the label alone suggests. Here is the detail almost everyone growing sprouts at home gets wrong. Cooking broccoli or its sprouts at high heat destroys that same enzyme before it can do its job. Eat sprouts raw or add cooked broccoli to a dish after the heat has been turned off and chew thoroughly, since the reaction that activates the compound happens specifically when the plant cells are physically broken. A small handful of homegrown broccoli sprouts, grown from seed on a windowsill in about 5 days, a few times a week, delivers more of this compound, more reliably, than a bottle of capsules that likely cost you considerably more for considerably less. Number two is the blueberry, an easy, low maintenance bush that most home gardeners can keep producing for a decade or more, and the plant most often compared, usually unfavorably in marketing copy, to imported exotic berry powders like acai and goji, sold at a considerable premium specifically for their antioxidant content. Here I want to be straightforward with you rather than oversell it. On a strict laboratory measurement called ORAC, which tracks raw antioxidant capacity, freeze-dried acai and goji powders genuinely do score higher, gram for gram, than fresh blueberries. If you are only comparing that single number, the imported powder wins. But that number tells you almost nothing about what you actually get for your money or for your effort. A cup of fresh blueberries delivers real fiber, real vitamin K, and real anthocyanins, the antioxidant pigment responsible for their color, all in a food you can grow yourself for the cost of one bush that keeps producing year after year. The imported powders are concentrated specifically because the water has been removed and the sugar concentrated along with it, and the actual serving needed to match that laboratory number is often smaller, more expensive per usable dose, and missing the fiber that came out during processing. Here is the detail most people get wrong when growing their own. Blueberries need genuinely acidic soil to thrive, more acidic than most garden beds naturally are. And planting them in regular garden soil without amending it is the single most common reason home blueberry bushes struggle or produce poorly. A cup of homegrown blueberries, a few times a week, in season, will not beat an exotic freeze-dried powder on a laboratory scoreboard. It will beat it on almost everything that actually matters day to day: cost, freshness, fiber, and the fact that you can walk outside and pick it yourself. Number one, and this is the one I told you about at the very beginning: garlic. It is almost certainly sitting in a bowl or a drawer in your kitchen right now, and there is a good chance you have never once compared it to the pill version sold right next to the vitamins at the pharmacy. Garlic supplements are enormously popular, and a large share of them are specifically marketed as odorless, processed in a way designed to remove the smell that makes some people avoid eating raw garlic altogether. Here is the problem with that particular selling point. The compound responsible for garlic's smell, allicin, is also the same compound largely responsible for its best documented benefits. Allicin only forms when a clove is crushed or chopped through a reaction between two components normally kept separate inside the intact clove. Processing garlic specifically to remove the smell frequently interferes with or entirely skips that same reaction, meaning a genuinely odorless garlic product may be delivering meaningfully less of the compound people are actually trying to get from it in the first place. Fresh garlic, crushed and allowed to sit for about 10 minutes before you cook or eat it, gives that enzyme reaction time to fully complete, producing allicin at its full potential, and from there, a range of more stable compounds your body absorbs and uses to support antioxidant activity and immune cell function. Here is the detail worth knowing if raw garlic is simply too harsh for you. Aged garlic, prepared by letting whole cloves ferment slowly over a period of months, converts those same compounds into gentler forms that are easier on digestion while still retaining the core benefit. An entirely different process from stripping the smell out through industrial deodorizing. 1 to 2 cloves a day, crushed and rested for 10 minutes before use, is a reasonable target, and it costs closer to a few cents a day than the price of a bottle of capsules. It has been sitting in your kitchen the entire time, doing more than the deodorized version ever could. Here is the pattern connecting every item on this list. In almost every case, someone took a crop that already worked, broke it apart, removed or damaged the one piece that made it effective, and sold the rest back to you at a considerable markup, sometimes with the most important compound intact, and sometimes, as with deodorized garlic or a heavily processed capsule, with it quietly missing altogether. That does not mean every supplement is worthless or that you should stop taking something your own doctor has specifically recommended for you. It simply means that item for item, a fresh, whole crop grown and prepared correctly tends to deliver more of what it promises for considerably less money than the processed version built around the same plant. Every time you grow a bed of peas instead of buying the powder made from them, you are recovering something. Every time you crush your own garlic and let it rest instead of reaching for the odorless capsule, you are recovering something. Every time you eat a whole beet instead of a scoop of beet powder, you are recovering something that packaging and marketing quietly took apart and charged you extra to put back together. Millions of families once grew a meaningful share of their own food out of pure necessity. During a shortage the entire country lived through together. And it worked. The seed packets are still cheap. The soil has not gone anywhere. The only real question is whether you will start growing the thing itself instead of paying for what is left of it after someone else got to it first. Tell me, in the comments, which one surprised you most? The peas that get sold back to you as protein powder, the garlic that loses its own benefit when it is made odorless, or the beets that an entire supplement category is quietly built around? I genuinely want to know. If this was useful, send it to the people it could actually help. Someone in your life spending real money on a green powder blend every month. A friend who takes a beet supplement for their blood pressure and has never grown an actual beet. Anyone who has a small patch of dirt sitting unused and has always assumed growing their own food would be complicated. And if you want more comparisons like this before you spend money on the next trendy product, subscribing is the easiest way to make sure you see it. That is genuinely the only reason to do it.